Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretshmer. This is the second day of a conversation with Jeff Sikkenga from the Ashbrook Institute about how scores for history and civics examinations have been falling off for a number of years. As we join the conversation again, I ask Jeff if the quality of the teaching material has something to do with the loss of quality.
So I think you're right. Part of it is the materials that teachers are often required to use.
I have heard repeatedly in the last number of years here in Connecticut, we've gone under two different testing regimens in the last 20, 25 years or so. And one of the complaints that I've heard from teachers who are trying to do the best job they can is that when the curriculum is drawn up and the schedules are drawn up by the State Department of Education, that it seems more focused on high scores for standardized tests than it does actually spending time teaching.
I think that's absolutely right. We see that. And, you know, if you just ask a student who's in even advanced placement American history classes, you know, you ask them, how much time did you get to spend on the U.S. Constitution, for example? They'll tell you that they had to rush through it in just a few classes or just a couple of weeks. And this is a fundamental document of the country that every American ought to understand and study. And it's a great story, the American Constitution.
It
but
certainly
if
is.
You have to rush through it in class, of course you don't see the significance and importance of it. So even in the highest level classes we have in high school, the teachers are forced, really, to rush through things in a way that doesn't allow for the kind of deep and serious engagement that produces real learning, real understanding, and real attachment.
I have a really short story for you. I think I can probably gauge by our conversation so far what your reaction will be. I will tell you right up front that I gasped when I heard it, which was a legislator, I won't say what branch of, what state or federal legislature I'm talking about, but a legislator saying, why do we have to follow all the stuff that's in the Bill of Rights? After all, it's not part of the Constitution after all.
Yeah, that's one of the consequences, right, of this problem. That, you know, we need wise leaders. And part of that wisdom is not just knowing contemporary policy, but knowing the fundamental principles, like the Bill of Rights and fundamental documents, that our whole system is rooted in. If we are ignorant of those, we can't possibly be taking wise action in current times.
Yeah, just imagine that, someone who didn't know that the amendments were amendments to the Constitution, so therefore the various that have been passed since the beginning are actually part of the Constitution, not just something that's tacked on that can be thrown off or thrown away when someone feels like it because they're too inconvenient for somebody.
Exactly.
But it boggled my mind, the very idea that someone would be that, a legislator, and yet not know the basis upon which their power flows, you know, delegated through the federal government to the states and so on and so on. That was kind of a mind blower for me personally.
Exactly.
Are you in the position to merely share with us the results of what these examinations, these surveys over the course of time have found as results, or also in the position to suggest perhaps what might be or could be, or perhaps with an imperative sense should be done in order to reverse the situation we're in, or has that train left the station already?
No, I always have hope, because we know that some students are learning this. Again, it's unfortunately a small percentage are proficient. The numbers have held right about, in American history, have held right around 15% that are only that are proficient. In American civics, it's about, the latest one was 24%, so less than a quarter of students even there. But look, there are great teachers out there doing great things. There are students out there who are learning. What we need to do is, and what we have done at the Ashbrook Center, is talk to those students, talk to those teachers, find out what works, and then design programs and resources based on that. So we've done that. We've seen classrooms and teachers completely transformed in their teaching, energized, empowered to teach their students and teach them really well. So there's hope for sure. It's not too late at all. And one of the things we need to do is we need to, I think, restore American history and civics to a primary place in our schools. Over the last 3 or 4 decades, there's been an increasing emphasis on STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Yeah.
And that's important. We need that in a modern economy, there's no question. But the growth of that, unfortunately, has displaced history and civics, so that your listeners might be interested to know that only 8 states in the United States require a year of civics in high school, and only 28 states require a year of U.S. history in high school. So, and in fact, only 25 states require any American history before the Civil War, so things like the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and our American founding.
Yeah.
So, we can't, if we're testing students and we're surprised that they don't know, it's partly because they don't spend a lot of time on it. That's one thing. I think we could restore some of that, and your social studies teachers out there will tell you that they sometimes don't feel properly valued in the significance of what we're doing, because, you can study math, but not everybody's going to be a mathematician or an engineer. You can study science, and it's important to do that, but not everybody's going to be a scientist. But everybody is going to be a citizen.
Yeah.
And they need to know the fundamentals, our shared history, our shared story as Americans, and our shared principles. So I think one thing is just to simply restore history and civics to its primary place. And another thing I would say, and we found this talking with great teachers, is let teachers teach history and civics in a great way. Replace or supplement their textbooks with primary sources. Why read about the Constitution when they can read the Constitution and discuss it? To have that conversation and tell that story about America. Everybody who's ever had a great history or government teacher, they know exactly how that teacher taught and what engaged them about it. And I would say let teachers teach in this great way and provide them with the opportunities themselves to learn it, so that they know it so thoroughly that they can teach it to their students. So when that happens, it works.
I certainly remember the teacher that I took all of that material from in high school, and have respected the memory of him ever since, and can quote large chunks of a lot of the material that we covered because he was such a compelling teacher. And my favorite of all that I had through the high school experience that I have never forgotten the example he made and the impression that he left. I'll conclude our conversation with one further comment, and that is, you mentioned Civil War earlier in terms of the history of the country, and it occurred to me while you were saying that the closing words of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address was, "Government for the people, by the people. We're fighting this so that it won't perish from the earth." But in the 21st century, we can't expect to have government by and for the people unless the people are educated well enough and understand the significance of it to actually be participants in it, rather than merely couch potatoes.
That's right. As Lincoln asked his fellow countrymen, "Will we nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth?" Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we've saved this country many times in wars that we've had to fight, and in great crises and struggles. We can't afford to lose the country slowly over time because of civic ignorance and lack of understanding. Yeah. We need to turn it around. We can do it, but we have to get busy at it.
Where do you direct listeners to as a contact point for further information then, sir?
Ashbrook Center I'm the executive director of the Ashbrook Center. Let me direct your listeners to ashbrook.org. And also, for teachers out there, for parents who, like my wife and I, who are teaching our homebound children right now, teachingamericanhistory.org, TAH.org, has great primary document resources, lesson plans, toolkits to help people teach history and government in a really compelling and interesting way. So ashbrook.org and TAH.org, 2 great sites to get more information and resources.
My thanks to Jeff Sikkenga from Ashbrook Institute for these 2 days of conversation on the WIHS Journal. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Paul Kretshmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from WIHS, Middletown.